You're tuned in to RX Radio.
If you are, I don't want to out anyone because they're all in the Hells Angels, but yeah, if you know which one we're talking about, if you actually do get a ZA, it's great. If you get a ZA box full of drugs, also great.
It's
if you get the
still
old
good.
half and half,
Win-win.
yeah, you get like half Hawaiian or like quarter Hawaiian, quarter pepperoni, and the rest is Trent.
So like
It's a bulk cycle.
It's a bulk size. There you go. It's all, everything you need. It's like the Walmart, please.
So to get like a legit pizza, do you order light sauce or like what's the sauce selection?
Sauced up.
Yeah, heavy on the sauce, please.
I just want to go to Windsor just because you guys talk about it. And like I live in Edmonton. I just want to visit a place that's worse than Edmonton.
So it is the thing. Windsor's better.
Okay.
So, but it's also too like you're talking to two people that have. Like, you could talk to people from Windsor, and they probably don't know the seedy underbelly.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be, like, you know, either, like, a piece of shit or, like, connected to that world. Like, some people might live in Windsor and not know, like, the underbelly of it.
No, they just ride their Sea-Doo and go home.
Yeah. You know, they get their DUI, they get their scooter and their 2.4 Laker, and they just fucking can't carry on with their life. But if you get – I think, honestly, what it is a personal training industry was, like, all the guys – because I noticed this growing up. Windsor in Ontario, when I was a kid – was you'd go to any city, like you go to Toronto and go clubbing or whatever as like an 18-year-old, and you realize that the biggest people in every city or the biggest people in Ontario were always in Windsor because no one ever had money. So like the currency and like how you would go to a bar and pick up was just the plains. It was the wild kingdom. Like it was just like who is the biggest person here? And you'd go out to like London, Ontario, or you go to Toronto or Ottawa or even go to Quebec, and everyone was like, why is everyone so small? Like, oh, they have money. Oh, so that's how that works in the rest of the world. But because that was the currency people traded, and all like people that were into gangs or drugs or you name it. Also being a border town,
Yeah.
you kind of just got plugged in, and like all those guys wanted to be in shape. They knew they didn't know what to do. They were all cash rich, and they couldn't put any of it in the bank, so they just give it to you, and then you get plugged into like what restaurants are like protected by what organizations, and then what pizza places to get your steroids from. It was a whole thing. So Windsor, but like on the whole, if you don't have like a tour guide, you're like, oh yeah, maybe this is shittier than Edmonton. It's a better story. I think.
It is a better story. And what we said is even if it is shittier, it's small.
Right.
And it takes way too long in Edmonton.
Dude.
I don't care if you're from Edmonton and you listen to this. I'm not apologizing. This city is too big to suck. Because if I got to drive 45 minutes to be bored, that's a problem.
It's a lot of surface area to suck.
Windsor, 26 minutes end to end.
And you're talking like greater Windsor area. Like you're Toronto to Amherstburg.
Exactly.
Or, Bell River to Amherstburg.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is a lot.
And you've seen something entertaining along the way.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
everyone here is just driving, like all the time.
Yeah.
Or walking in the middle of the fucking road.
Or walk. Yeah. I mean, you
It's
see
the
that.
Jacksonville, Florida of Canada.
It's like largest per square foot
it
city.
makes no sense. Everyone gets like their square 10 kilometers. It's just not it.
No, it's not. And we haven't passed like a cool bakery or 26 pizza shops or a Lube King.
And the thing with Windsor, Lube Kings are big. The thing with Windsor is you never feel like when we were going into Lux, that restaurant the other day, we were in a 2x2 tight formation. Like everyone was watching everyone six. Like it was real. But when you're in Windsor, you don't have that. Like you never feel in danger. Hand to God, me and Shane Butner were driving down Droulard Road.
Shout out Droulard.
Droulard is the toughest of the tough hoods.
And Paulie, I'll see you next time.
And home of Teasers Strip Club, by the way, where we have C-Section Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Shout out Teasers. Can't make this shit up.
Supporting the single mothers.
And we're driving down Droulard. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. I think I'm driving him somewhere. He wasn't staying at home. And we're driving down Droulard, not a soul in sight. And some guy at a stop sign, four-way stop sign, is crossing the street. And he has a chainsaw. And that motherfucker was on. And I was just sitting there. Guy was walking, like Slim Shady LP type stuff. No shirt on, chainsaw, crosswalk, which I thought was interesting, that he decided to abide by that one law. He decided to abide by crossing at the crosswalk with his chainsaw that was on. Yeah. And I looked at my buddy Shane. He was kind of drunk, and we looked at him. At no point, even in that transaction, did I feel threatened. He even stopped in the middle and kind of looked. Like he was clearly looking for someone. But in Windsor, you know when it's you.
Yeah.
You know when the guy with the chainsaw shows up. And like,
you fucked up.
Shit, you fucked up.
Yeah.
But it's like, he literally kind of had this like, oh, Mike's not there. peered through the thing, or like he literally gave us a tip of the chainsaw. Like he kind of like revved it, like and then just carried on into the night. And I was like, oh, and it wasn't until years later that I'm like, oh, it's kind of fucked up. And I had some friends of mine come from out of town, and like I remember driving to a gym. It was actually the gym Tess used to work out at. It's called Workhorse. It's owned by my buddy Bobby Trent. And they moved to a downtown location 4 blocks from the police station. So you think, police station, it'll be fine. And I'm starting to be more aware that Windsor was a different place. And at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, maybe 2:30, gorgeous sunny day. I went home to visit my parents. And I would go to the gym to train with Bobby. And I was driving down Tecumseh Road. And on the corner, there was just like people waiting on a crosswalk. There was like a mom with 2 small children. And there was a guy standing there. And in his right hand, he had a hatchet. And on his left arm, well, he didn't have a left arm. So there's a one-armed guy standing with a hatchet 4 blocks from the police station in the middle of the afternoon. And it's like, it's concerning 0 people. Like, mom, 2 children, and like the kids are just kind of running around, and the guy's just standing there with a hatchet and no arm.
Is this fresh that he has 1 arm?
It's
like he minutes ago had 2 arms?
It wasn't minutes, but it made it seem like you could easily, turn back the clocks of time and be like, those 2 things are related,
yeah,
right? Like the hatchet in the right
there's a
hand.
connection.
He's like, you're taking my left one. You take my left arm, shame on you.
Yeah.
Take my right arm, shame on me, right?
Yeah.
So, but it wasn't the kids and the mom that did it. So, like, he didn't have an
axe to grind.
Right, there it is.
There you go.
It's just like, so everyone was just kind of cool. Like, yeah, no, like he's looking for someone.
Yeah.
But, it's a swift justice town. Like, people, you keeps you in line. And, nothing happened. I just went to the gym, and he carried on his merry way, and the kid and the mom crossed the street, and it was all good. And no one batted an eye. And I tell those stories to people, I'm like, what the fuck did you grow up in? I was like, it's the universe, man.
Yeah.
It was great. And Edmonton doesn't have that. Like, Edmonton, like, I felt like at any given point, one of these tweaks is going to come out with a shiv, and we're just going to have to go fucking, SEAL Team 6 on their ass.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, no.
I think it's like I don't realize it because I just do my shit and go home. And like, I know the places to eat and like the places that I like, so I go there. And then like, I don't worry about anything else. So now, traveling with you guys, I go to cities that actually have like forethought and like, thought out the whole
Planner,
thing.
yeah.
Someone who planned it and didn't have.
A drug addiction?
Yeah, basically. And it's ruined my hometown.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it's fine.
You know what I think it is? I think it's cities that are landlocked just blow.
Yeah.
All the
We've
cities
got
with
the
water
river,
go
yeah.
hard. Windsor's got the river. Toronto's got water. Vancouver had water.
Yeah.
No water.
And it doesn't take much water to make a city. Like, the Detroit River is literally
disgusting.
less than, yeah, but like, it's the distance between us and that road on the other side of that park.
Yeah.
It's dead ass. Like, it's just right there. But it's enough to give you like a bit of breathing room.
Because water's, it's calming. It's meditative.
Yeah, I get it.
You know
We're
what I
all
mean?
going
There's some
back to
kind
the
of-
water at some point.
That's what I mean. It's like some kind of, metaphor for being relaxed to the water.
Yeah, and we don't have that here.
They don't have that here.
We got a river.
What,
But
Saskatchewan
like,
River.
Yeah, North Saskatchewan. But you gotta like fucking go down to the little ravine and like you don't know what's down in there.
That's
right?
it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, for sure. Recently there was some dude that like jumped off a bridge
Yeah.
and like
I
landed in
sympathize.
that ravine. Yeah.
Did he stick the landing?
Oh well,
Something
stuck the
stuck.
landing is he
Yeah.
doesn't. I mean, he definitely doesn't have legs anymore for sure.
Is he dead?
And I think he was screaming. I think he's still alive, or at least he left alive.
Is he still down there? I just leave.
This will
gotta
take
be-
care of itself eventually.
That's got to be
So
demoralizing.
wait, is none of the city built around the river?
It's just like kind of runs through it, but like
Oh yeah, we crossed it.
Yeah.
The river runs
yeah, that bridge, the white
Yeah,
pillars.
that's nice. You'd
Yeah.
think
That was
you'd
cool.
build
That was a nice
up.
area.
yeah, that bridge is new.
Yeah.
So like
We
it's
crossed
like,
it today?
Coffee shop.
Yeah,
We
coffee
crossed it.
shop.
We go by the Fairmont and you look over and you're like,
yeah.
oh yeah, it's like a postcard.
Oh, okay.
For like 2 seconds and then the meth.
Yeah.
We just spend our money on stupid shit. Like we have this box. It's like an elevator, but it just goes at like a 15-degree incline.
Okay.
And
Like
it's
a gondola?
Yeah, it's like a gondola, but you're just in a square on tracks.
But
it's
it's
like
like
that.
that meaningful elevation.
It doesn't go anywhere because you can just take the stairs and it goes the same place.
But like, where's the start and end of this?
Yeah.
By the Hotel McDonald, by the Fairmont.
Okay.
Oh, and then it goes to where?
It goes 20 meters down on incline, and then you just you walk to the end of a pier, and then you can just look into the river where they,
Jump.
Where they
where
jump.
they jump.
Yeah, where they jump.
Better
Yeah.
vantage
Yeah.
point of the dude with
Yeah.
no heels anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
And, well, what I love is the ice center. Someone was so
Oh,
we're
the
at
ice
dinner
district,
the other
yeah,
night,
yeah.
and like we're talking to the waiter who moved here. I was like, "Oh, that sucks." And he's like, "Yeah, it's pretty good down here though. Like we're building out the ice center." And I immediately think with what I saw getting into the restaurant. That they have some sort of like methamphetamine or methadone clinic.
Yeah.
The ice center.
Yeah, right. Affectionately named the ice center. No, it's like a downtown city square, not intended for that purpose, but yet where everyone goes to shoot up heroin.
Okay.
Amazing stuff. Really, really top drawer. It's not even Canada at a certain point.
No.
It's Afghanistan is what it is.
Afghanistan.
It's not ideal.
It is a desolate place.
Yeah, I think the further north you go, there's some sort of correlation with drug addiction.
Yeah, I don't go here. I don't like you. We're north, like we're so far north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't go here. I'm on the west. And
Oh.
There's a hand.
No. I just mean
No,
on
like-
the earth.
Oh,
The-
okay.
The,
yeah.
further north you go on
But
the earth,
oddly enough, crime increases with temperature.
it increases with temperature.
The
So
relative-
higher temperature, higher crime.
Yeah.
So I could see that making
Yeah.
sense for I enjoy a hotter climate.
Right.
I feel better, but I think that's coming from a colder climate.
Well, it's easier to live, so there's
Yeah.
more people and more people outside that interact.
okay.
And
right?
the term "I'm outside,"
Yeah, catch me outside.
yeah, you're outside.
That's
Right.
true.
I'll go
That's where it
outside.
goes down.
I'll tell you where
So-
I'm not going to catch them outside. Edmonton.
Edmonton,
Yeah.
yeah, 'cause it's
Not
cold.
gonna catch me outside.
They're
this
either going to be
far.
so strung out they look like furniture, or it's negative 40.
Yeah.
I honestly think, given when we've been here when it's really
Yeah.
cold, and we've been here when it's really
Yes,
cold. I've
we
been
have.
to Edmonton 3 times.
Dude, that's too many.
Sorry.
for next year.
That's well, I gotta
Yo.
reschedule that. I'm of the suspicion, and I don't know how to prove it other than taking Edmonton heroin, that they must have antifreeze in the heroin.
has
It's the
to,
only
yeah.
way your meth zombies could be staying alive. Because it's already like in the week we've been here, straight up, like in the morning, it's got noticeably colder every
Cold.
morning.
Yeah.
And it's like, dog, it's September. Like
Yeah.
y'all going through it. And I see the same people like hunkering down in the corner of their little glass box bus stop.
Yeah.
And it's like, because the one thing that keeps Canadians in Montreal, Toronto, London, Ontario, some like bigger Canadian cities, a little bit on the cleaner side, for better or for worse, it's like you get in an unemployment line around this time.
Yeah.
When it's single digits in the morning in Celsius, you're like, you know what? Time to go back to work.
Yeah,
Like
gonna head
Kramer in the
inside,
bagel
yeah.
shop. It's like, it's time to go back. The strike is over. Or you die.
Yeah.
Like in San Diego, I met a guy once in San Diego who was homeless in Saskatchewan. I'm like, this is the smartest homeless guy in the world. He
Yeah.
just literally drifted. It's like, well, if I have
Gonna-
no prospects,
Yeah.
I might as well live in
hot place.
Pacific
Fuck.
Beach or
People with
Ocean
millions of dollars pay like $500,000 to live in a van in San
Yeah.
Diego.
Beach. Yeah,
That's
this
the
guy's
thing to
sorted
do.
out.
Yeah.
His dog, a shopping cart, good shopping cart system.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And yeah, he figured. But people just, they're contained.
Yeah.
It's just
It's
I don't,
insane.
it ain't it.
No, Edmonton's not it for me.
It's not it for me.
I think
too.
it's just an interesting. I think being here and thinking about people that live here or the homeless idea of being homeless in Edmonton, it's decision making. It's just an odd, like
Okay,
Windsor,
yeah, go.
like us living in Windsor. Again, it just comes down to decision making. It's like, what is your process in making the decisions you make? And I understand things are out of people's control, but not here.
Well, I think it comes back to a conversation that me and you have all the time, and that life is not a ton of decisions.
No.
It's like a couple of really big ones, and we will send each other shit of people just losing their minds or saying shit or popping off, and it's like life is really like maybe 6 to 12 pivotal moments where you just have to keep it together. for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's we say, and I didn't realize that this was going to be the podcast that we go in, but let's just fucking
This
go
is
in.
it.
5 minutes. Like you have to keep it together for 5 minutes.
We watched a video today that I think is
Yeah.
the exact
Right.
allegory of keep it together for 5
The
minutes.
one chick, so the video in question, the Pennsylvania snow shovel massacre, whatever
Yeah,
the fuck we
dude,
want to call
Fargo.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the chick just didn't keep it together. Whatever, a little bit of banter. You want to throw epithets at your neighbors for not shoveling the driveway. But the second that woman, so there's garage footage on Reddit, disclaimer, warning, if you go looking it up,
it's very distressing.
It's gruesome. It's crazy.
Yeah,
You're
it's
literally
real.
watching two people get executed in the street. But in this confrontation between husband and wife and neighbor, husband and wife obviously on the same team, the girl just doesn't keep it together.
No.
In the video, the girl pulls out a heater, desk pops it a few times in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Fast forward 47 seconds later, she's riddled like Swiss cheese.
Yeah. Let's clarify that they may have been on the team, but they were on the losing team. For
Losing
sure.
team.
Yeah, well, they
yeah.
lost.
Everyone lost that game.
It was a sudden death match. Yeah. Eliminated.
But it's just like all that took was like, 5 minutes. Keep it together. Go inside.
Yep.
Maybe like you don't gotta make men's, but you definitely don't pull out the Glock in the middle of the street and fire it off. Like you just that's a big decision. That's
a big
That's
decision.
a life or death decision. Now that's a very drastic case of keeping it together for 5 minutes. But there's a few times in your life where like there's maybe 3 or 4 decisions that come back to back to back, and maybe it's a course of 5-10 minutes, maybe it's a course of 5-10 months, where if you could just keep it together, and first recognizing that this is a pivotal moment that I'm about to make a very
that
big
requires decision making.
Right, that 5 minutes, and it doesn't take any longer than that.
No.
You just kind of sit. Like the amount of times, and this might sound off color, most of the men listen.
Exactly
The
what you're
number
gonna
of
say.
times that I've given young guys advice. Like, all right, can you give me? I don't know why people come to me for advice, but.
Because Andrew Tate got banned, so they gotta go to you now.
Well, also, I just thought that was Pitbull in remission. I had no idea who that guy was for the longest time. My advice to most 20-year-old kids, and they're kids now because I'm in my 30s, is like, go home and jerk off. Like that's just like before you do whatever you think you want to do, whatever it is. You want to fucking start pistols at dawn with your neighbor. You want to go home with someone that's not your old lady, like. Because I've seen it just ruin lives. Mm-hmm. And the antidote is so easy. Go home, give yourself the one right-handed sleeping pill, fuck your hand and go to bed. Like, it's just the number of wars. Like Hitler gets into art school, jerks off, goes to sleep. No Nuremberg trials.
Yeah.
Just didn't do it. Couldn't keep it together. 5 minutes.
Wow.
And that's your and that like it's
Should
just,
we wrap it there? Is that all?
It's the mic drop, man.
Yeah.
But it's literally like you could solve world hunger if people adopted that, because the number of just human implosions that you just sit back and watch and you're like, God damn it, man, are you fucking kidding me?
I mean, we could keep going on this, or we could give people a better way to make decisions. We could help improve the decision-making process.
Are you trying to turn this into a fitness thing now?
Dude, I'm segueing it.
Okay.
And it's a hard segue.
Dude, you're reeling this in.
Yeah.
I'm reeling this in. No, but I think this is actually a cool segue to what we talked about today, which is this idea of forward model.
Okay.
Because you brought up something when we were teaching today, and you said intuition.
Yes.
And I think intuition could be described by somebody, I don't know if the dictionary describes it this way, but a combination of experience and knowledge that influence the decisions that you make. Okay. When I have an intuition about something, it's not a reptilian from birth knowledge of something. I've encountered something, heard of something, experienced something, that when I'm in a situation, even subconsciously, there's this thing, intuition that's subconscious, that goes, don't go down there.
Can I interject?
Please.
Because I think I 100% agree with your definition. The only thing I would maybe offer up my take on is that's the definition of intuition for men. Men have evolved. No, stay with me,
dude. I'm not leaving.
No. Yeah, thank you. But when I was in Kenya and you watch lions and tigers and cheetahs, they're all instinct.
Yes.
And men, male, females, all instinct. You see cubs and they know the role, right? There's obviously whatever communication, nonverbal. Yeah. Obviously, they're not sitting there going drawing up the plan at the breakfast table. It's like, we're gonna grab the fucking antelope. You sit here, keep my 6. You look at them and you're just looking at instinct. It's survival generation after survival generation, and that's what propagates. So their instinct concentrate. I think men have had that bred out of them. So you make an interesting point, and it feeds into kind of my idea.
Yeah. Is
because you think your definition involves experience and knowledge, which are nurture traits.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I think it starts with paying attention, but women have intuition because they still bear children.
But it's a nature trait.
Yeah, exactly. It's
okay, so I agree with you on that. 100%.
So I think men are purely nurtured intuition, and that's an opt-in process. Mm-hmm. right? And a lot of times people don't opt in to paying attention, acquiring the knowledge or experience. So that's kind of my caveat. This is like a men thing where like women, because I've been in situations where girls will say, don't go down there. And now the girls never been down as many alleys as we have. Me and you have been down alleys, get the shit kicked out of us. And we, with knowledge and experience, like, nah, there's guys behind that dumpster. Like, I know how this works. Like, I'm going to chase down that guy. There's 3 dudes behind there. I get fucking jokered with the sign. I'm good. Where chicks never run down that alley. But something told her through generations of previous running, like, no, don't go there. And that just not propagating. I think that's the major difference today is men do not have natural intuition. It's acquired or nurtured intuition. Please.
Yeah, no. So I think I totally agree with that, and maybe that is some kind of I don't know anything about don't Huberman, don't at me, but like there's obviously some genetic or instinctual trait maybe in women because they bear children that they have this extra thing cognitively that we don't, right? But I think, maybe even to more benefit of that is understanding how, like skill acquisition is about understanding how we learn. But I think before you get to learn anything, which is what you're talking about through nurture, you have to understand how you make the decisions you make to learn. And I think there is a process that we could probably dumb down about that. And I think that's that thing called forward model. And I think that's just a systematic approach to this thing you call intuition that you may or may not have, because you may or may not have the experience or knowledge of the thing you're making a decision on at the time. But if you hold it together for 5 minutes and kind of understand how decisions are made, it might benefit you. So today we were talking about the forward model, and I think it's broken down into intention, hypothesis, and action. So I think we all, when making choices, usually have some level of intention, consciously or subconsciously. If it's exercise that we're talking about specifically here, we know what we want to get out of a movement. Is it going to make me stronger? Is it going to put tension across fibers? Is it going to fix my injury? But being conscious of that intention is integral in not only that movement probably being beneficial for many reasons, even if it's just placebo and buy-in and adherence, but also from the idea that it's going to shape the hypothesis we make, and from there, the strategies we use or the compensations we make in performing that movement to action.
My thing with that, I like 2 words that you said, integral and awareness. Because a lot of people will fool themselves on the intent of a movement because they're not aware of what it does, and they don't have the integrity to figure out or be honest with themselves that this is actually good at doing this.
Correct.
Like, you want a big bench press to have a big bench. Okay, great. Is that the best thing for pec development? No. Do you honestly want pec development? Do you want a big bench? Because you can have one. It's okay to have whatever goal you have. So I think that's a key concept to shine the light on, because I think people will be like, oh, okay, intention, got it. It's like, no.
What is intention?
What is intention? What is your intention? And do you have enough awareness of where you are, what tools you're using for that to be a vehicle to drive the intent that you're after?
Yeah, like I think you said an interesting thing today, and I didn't know what you were going to say when you said it, and usually when we teach these things, I can kind of guess the next line. But you were like, athletes are really good at doing things when they're tired.
Yeah. Thinking when they're tired. And I think that's true. And I think even to expand on that, athletes are really good at adapting. And I think more detailed, they're really good at performing forward models really, really fast. So Reggie Bush was a great example of this. I remember Reggie Bush in an interview said that he never looks at the defender in front of him. He looks 2 defenders down the field. Because he said, once I get to the first defender, the decision is made. He's like, I'm making the decision for 2 guys later, like when he's returning on special teams. And he was really, really good at special teams. So I think that's a big thing that people need to understand in exercise, is like having an intention. Obviously, Reggie's intention is getting to the touchdown zone. He's ran to the touchdown zone time and time again. He has a lot of experience. He's watched video of the opposing team. He knows people's biases. So from those 2 points, knowing where a touchdown zone is, having been there, having watched a ton of film on the team he's running against, he can now create a forward model or hypothesis on what's going to occur based on his actions. And his next decision is based on that moment. So I think in exercise, one thing we remove from the decision-making process, not only of, as coaches, the movements we choose, but we remove it from our athlete or client, is the opportunity to introduce them to a variable environment where we allow them to build multiple forward models for something. Because we talk about things down to the nuance, and people on the internet talk to things down to the nuance of foot pressure. Well, foot pressure is a very dynamic and organic thing that can change in the middle of a movement if you want it to. I don't need to establish a pressure in my foot and hold it there. I don't need to establish a static head position. These things can be dynamic, but they're dynamic for you out of
experience in your ability to forward model. You know how it feels when you get to the hole. Like you said, you rock back and forth and you start to judge where your center of mass is. And we make this decision-making process. So even broken down into details that don't matter, I think to simplify it, it's being able to set an intention, build a hypothesis around that, and that creates an action. And that loop, that forward model loop, is what's going to feed back into the next repetition, the next session, 6 sessions down the road. And I think it's something that we don't build into our programming early enough.
I think the awareness precipitates the loop. The awareness is the socket that allows that loop to come back, because ultimately, like, and athletes are a really good example of this. When you talk about Reggie, it just becomes pattern recognition,
Correct.
right? And that's where that's what learning really is. It's just everything can, at least in the logical sense, or when they're logically occurring, can have things that give you things that we could call intuition.
Yes.
But it's a recognition of patterns, right?
It's being cognizant enough in the moment to recognize those things as patterns.
Right. Yeah, and like baseball is a good example of this. When a pitcher throws a ball, the batter doesn't have time to think, right? Randy Johnson, 6'8", 6'9", throwing 104.
Killing
by the time
birds.
that far, pigeons, R.I.P.
Fuck all birds.
Dude, by the time the ball leaves his hands, you're probably looking at, he's maybe 10 feet closer to you than when he was. You're really looking at 104 miles an hour top speed, accelerating out of his hand that's 50 feet away from you. And you got to take this bat that's over your shoulder. And so you made that decision when you see the seams up above his head, right? So if you see 2 fingers out or split or whatever, you're kind of like, okay. And it's just the recognition of patterns over time. Now, recognizing patterns is twofold: understanding where you are and understanding where you need to be. And it's the awareness of understanding where you are first from, like, in an exercise selection standpoint, that's sort of like your awareness of your center of mass. That will be your starting point. Like, if we want to get somewhere in Edmonton, we need to know the 7-digit fucking house address of this Airbnb we're staying at, and it can tell us where to go. So the awareness, to me, is when we look at that intention, hypothesis, action, and then as it loops back around to create this pattern recognition, it's really the initial awareness that if you're going to go through this endeavor, you have to initiate that importance. You have to relay the importance of, and that's why I start a lot of people off by just finding their center of mass, because that is like, all right, this is home base.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to be in home base all the time. Some of the best plays in sports history have happened when rib cage isn't stacked over the pelvis. But if I can keep center of mass over base of support, then we can venture off with any intention in any direction towards any hypothesis to take any action. Mm-hmm. But we can loop back to that being a constant, and then we can go, not necessarily that loop has to go down the same intention, hypothesis, action, but we can go anywhere with any intention. So I think that's something that people miss in relaying the importance of that to their clients.
Correct.
You know what gets me, and I don't know if this is a little bit off, and I think I've been hanging around you too much for the last 24 hours by starting things with like, what really grinds my gears, is I think one thing that people are doing that robs clients of this initial awareness is people are deprioritizing warm-ups for clients because they're programming from their skill level, not their clients.
Correct.
Like, we look at a scap set, or we look at a face pull or scapular retraction, scapular downward rotation or depression. We look at an upward rotation of the scapula. We look at internal and external rotation in isolation, like really menial notes of movement, right? That someone might inherently go, well, that's going to be a part of the lat pull down, so just do the lat pull down. But it's like, I use a music analogy with Harlan today.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, man, when you play guitar, are you playing classical gas flamenco on a nylon string? Are you sitting there, around a campfire playing fucking Wonderwall off 4 chords on ultimateguitar.com? And Harlan, being the handsome gentleman that he is, goes, I'm doing the ultimate guitar tab, man. We're not sitting here, Mozart and the shit. It's like, okay, you need to, if you want to perform complex movements, you need to have those base level notes. So for me, when we look at an expanded horizon of movement potential, like everyone at this table, we all have the ability to perform complex movements. Jay probably more proficient than most, and then you guys would file in, and I'd be the shit end of the retarded stick on the other. But compared to someone who's never trained before, it's like, I don't take for granted that scapular depression or upward rotation or even an integration of asymmetrical patterns are something that I can perform and coordinated with. So, yeah, in my expanded time horizon, I don't necessarily need to spend too much time in my warm-up doing it. I can probably just kind of get on with it. For me, center of mass is big. I make sure, like, all right, sort that shit out, and that doesn't take long. And I can get into the ascending warm-up set model. But I think when we're trying to lay the framework of awareness to start this feedback loop as you've laid out, I think one of the most important things we can do from an actual practical training perspective that takes this model and puts it into, like, application is warming up will create that awareness. When you start to layer these notes of, oh, we're going to do this face pull to teach us how to retract our shoulder blade, teach us how to externally rotate. And then we're going to integrate or associate, as you would kind of say in skill acquisition, that, that simple 2 notes into an orchestration of movement under heavier loads. And I think there's such a movement of people programming from their own physical ability for clients that aren't at their level that they lose the significance of those exercises that exist on a much more compressed horizon of physical ability.
Yeah, and I think one thing we talk about in skill acquisition, which I think this is when it was such a long one.
I can't anymore. It's so hard.
Good for you.
Dude, after a whole day?
That was a lot of words.
Dude, I'm not talking.
Really hit stride.
Done.
Yeah.
Just hit subscribe now. Do we even have it? Can you subscribe to this?
No, hit stride.
Oh, I was
Like
just
you
saying
really-
subscribe.
No,
I
subscribe
guess,
to the podcast,
yeah.
Spotify, and
That'd be
RX.
good.
I was just giving us a break like
Oh.
they do on YouTube. Hit
gotcha.
subscribe if you like
Yeah.
this. But no, and I think, I don't know, I like the podcast we're doing right now just to pause.
That's a great awareness
I think,
to have.
Yeah. Because I think we're not redefining words, but I think we're giving better definition to some of the words that we use or differentiating them. And I think, you talking about warm-ups, some people's warm-ups negating this ability to create awareness, I think sometimes what we do is we misinterpret awareness or the, having awareness with being vigilant. And awareness and vigilance are very different. Awareness is learned or is nurtured in a safe environment, right? Don't get in a car with strangers, look both ways before you cross the road, don't touch something that's hot. But vigilance is something you have in a stressful situation. You can be vigilant, which you have a heightened state of awareness, but it's not taught and it's not learned. If you're in a state where you're hyper vigilant, you're over aroused and you make usually bad decisions. Right. So I think that's something we skip over in training is we teach awareness in a situation so stressful to that client, not meeting them where they're at, that we're developing hypervigilance towards something, not an awareness of it.
Right.
So teaching someone how to deadlift with a barbell in which they could do everything wrong and round their back and do everything else, or getting under a barbell to learn how to squat and having your knees cave and all those things and having to now overcorrect things due to safety or whatnot, is creating a hypervigilance towards it, not an awareness around it.
Right.
Now, removing that person from that lift, and like you said, meeting people where they're at in terms of skill level. Me and Jiunta were talking. I've now used isometrics more than I've used anything because I think it's a great way to build awareness. It's just putting people in a position so long that you're nurturing in a very safe environment the awareness around positioning. Then they can integrate that position into something that might require more vigilance, but it's just not to a point of over-arousal where people get stressed, make bad decisions.
And I think the arousal thing plays in twofold. Because let's play with the idea that vigilance in like a real world setting. Let's say you're. I read a book called The Gift of Fear once. It's a sick book by this guy named Gavin DeBecker, who basically just studied violence his whole life. He grew up in like an abusive family and all this. And he tells a story of like someone not being aware of the surroundings. This female was walking back from a movie, and there was like a dodgy guy following her and her daughter. She didn't want to set a precedent to her daughter about being prejudicial, so she ignored the intuition. And then all of a sudden, homeboy's trying to fucking run up on her and her daughter getting into the car, and she just does the whole key between the finger trick, gets lucky, and takes an eyeball out. Right? Now, the amount of energy it takes to be vigilant, like the adrenaline dump of that, you're fucked. Like I mean, if you've ever been in a fight, it's the adrenaline dump that fucks you. And we see this. We have friends that fight.
Well, a big one for me was I used to ride a motorcycle in the Bay Area.
Oh, shit.
And like being very hyper vigilant on my way, because I would split lanes. I would try and beat traffic. And then I would get home from school like 5:30 maybe, something like that. And I have to sit on the couch in a dark room and just close my eyes because I was so jacked up from being so vigilant in that scenario before I could like go to the gym and do the things I actually wanted to do.
And that's a point past awareness.
Yeah, it's such a heightened state.
Dude, I remember being a bouncer. I'd finish 2, 3 a.m. I literally got to a point when I first started. I'd bring my acoustic guitar in the trunk of my Ford Fusion. I would drive to the river at the marina by my house and just sit there until the sun came up. Because bottles start flying, people pulling guns. And it's like, and I never had any preparation for that. Like you made a really good point years ago, and I reference it all the time about the perception or the anticipation of the stress, right? Like you compare the Army Ranger, like you compare, one of our dudes over in Ukraine splitting wigs. He's cool, but you take some foot soldier from fucking Podunk, Idaho, who fears God and has got to cap a bunch of people or is getting raided. That's a totally different experience, right? There's a proactive versus reactive. And reactive is energy sucking.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're learning how to just press your scapula under a barbell that's close to your max bench, you're doing it, but it's exhausting. It's inefficient. So then whenever the rest of the session is, it's like you've just been under this high stress, bar is going to come down on my throat situation. And then the subsequent exercises after are going to suffer. Whereas like, hey, no, we're going to remove that threat of the bar taking your front row of teeth off, and we're just going to do an exercise that focuses on that unit. Just like, you resort to your training, right? So if you've known anyone in whether it's law enforcement, whether it's military, whether it's combat sports in general, right? Like you drill the skill. So that when someone does have your fucking arm up your own ass, you're like, oh, I actually know how to get this guy in a triangle choke. And what kills you is panic.
Yeah.
Like when you panic from that hypervigilance of like, I just got to figure it out, that's when you die.
Well, that's like when you see like, I'm not even anything, in grappling and whatnot, but when you're new to grappling, or I was new to grappling, it's like you tap from exhaustion, right? Because you're hypervigilant, because you don't understand, you don't have a forward model of what's happening next. Dude, I wrestled, wore a singlet, been in fights. I've never done jiu-jitsu with a gi on, and now I'm wearing heavy cotton pajamas, and some guy's grabbing all kinds of things they've never been able to grab before. There's a level of hypervigilance there, which exhausts you because I can't forward model. I can't make a hypothesis about what he's doing, and then all of a sudden being choked out, my fingers being broken. So it's like there's a level of hypervigilance. Now, the more you go, that vigilance goes away and leaves awareness. And if you can get to the point where it's not vigilance anymore, hypervigilance, and it's awareness, you can make these better decisions. You can, quote unquote, slow down time.
Yeah. But I think the trick is removing the threat.
Correct.
Right? Like,
that doesn't happen through just rolling and sparring.
And that's the thing, right? Like you have to drill that skill. And I think that's where people, they don't understand. I think one of the things that factors in people not programming from their own physical ability, or programming from their own physical ability and not the physical ability of their clients, is that they don't realize that the reserve of mental capacity when it comes to exercise, like if you've wrestled, if you've played sports, if you've gotten to street fights, if you've had things where the future model has so many potential, seemingly infinite outcomes, there are more than one potential outcome of a movement going awry, but there's not nearly the same plethora of movement because the barbell's not swinging back; it's pulling straight to the center of the earth.
Yeah, it's like,
so that constraint of the barbells or the weight or the machine's arc or whatever it is, it compresses the amount of options that things could go wrong. But as the amount of options are compressed, when we're putting an athlete or a new client, someone who's detrained, in that situation, their relative capacity for dealing with any change is also compressed. So the relative scale of you going, all right, street fight, I'm just going to take my shirt off, let's go. There's nothing to grab, there's nothing to pull on, I've got to watch or nothing like that, to then all of a sudden, we're rocking the house coat. What's this new experience? That's like taking someone who doesn't have like a skill set for any variability in movement and then putting them in an exercise that we look at from our vantage point as athletes or former athletes or current athletes, whatever, where situations will change 10 times in a second or 100 times in a second or have the potential to change 100 times in a second. And you look at someone from our vantage point looking at an exercise going, well, that's like just in the sagittal plane or that's on a track. But not realizing that they're on the other side of that going, holy shit, there's so much going on here because the heaviest thing I lifted before that was a cup of coffee or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, and that's like the physical empathy is something that I've kind of been, and like empathy on the whole, say what you want about it, but try and imagine what your clients experience. What is that exercise relative to their mental capacity to create awareness and then begin to model is, I think, number one as a trainer is trying to adopt the mindset because we all got into this young. Right? We all started sports at a young age. We've all been on the leading edge of our physical capabilities as we've developed physically. And with that development came like a cognitive reserve that just lets us take for granted how difficult some of these tasks might be to someone who's undertrained.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, I'm no weightlifter or anything, but me and Jiunta even talked about it yesterday. Like, for me, if I can come in when, you know, me and Jiunta hang out and, like, clean 100 kilos, even if it looks like shit, I'm like, oh, I can still do it. And it's not an expression of being good at anything. It's just an expression of athletics. And all I'm doing with that barbell is understanding that at a base level, in my head, I'm like, I just kind of got to jump and let go, and this barbell will probably crash on me, but I'll catch it because I'm pretty strong. But it's like, that's just an expression of having jumped a lot, you know, or having thrown something over my head. I'm like, I've thrown a medicine ball over my head countless times. This is a barbell. I also use a barbell for other things. I can understand the modality, and I can understand a lot of the base concepts around the movement, and I can forward model to do it. That's why you see football players with no technique lift insane weights. Or our friend, shout out Patty B.
Dude, he's a monster.
Benching 160 kilos on a Coleman camping cooler. Because I said so. Because I said, you could probably do that, so he tried it.
Yeah.
But this guy can jump over a volleyball net, clean and jerk an insane amount.
185?
Insane.
Over 400 pounds?
He's jacked out of his mind, right? That's an athletic ability to forward model. He kind of gets it. He gets enough about it that he can grab onto it. And if something goes wrong in the middle of his heave and press, he can start to strategize on the way up. Okay, squeeze harder, tuck my elbows, flare my elbows. What do I have to do, right? Those are all forward models. Like, if any of us struggle on a lift at the gym, if you struggle to bench press and you have enough experience benching, there's that second wind you get where you get stuck and then you see guys like all press again and they push their head back and they might flare their elbows out and they can press it out with a bit of work, right? Like you can recover a snatch, but you're forward modeling at the bottom of that snatch. Like you get there and I see it. I see the elbow move and the shoulder move and I can see the pressure in his hand or his hips go and then he stands up. Well, he just went through the Doctor Strange 4,000 outcomes of this snatch and went, I can save it if I do this. Well, that's a forward model.
Yeah.
You know, and you see that at advanced training ages, but that's built through how many times you get to snatch. And the programming, being aware of physical empathy, readiness, is what allows you to get the reps in to build that forward model.
Yeah, and it starts with those, like, I'm going to make an analogy. It starts with, like, physical phonetics, like knowing, you don't need to know scapular depression. You just need to know your shoulder blade can move here if you contract this or do this. Like, in the same way, like, I think of Pat Stay just died, R.I.P. Pat Stay, right? Canadian freestyle rapping legend, prior to Halifax, Nova Scotia. I watch freestyle, like, battle raps, and you think about circumstances that can change in any minute. I often start talking without knowing what the fuck I'm going to say.
You and I both.
And we get through it, right? Because we have this acquired intuition of knowledge and experience, right? And so the more knowledge you have, the more experience you have going and just fucking starting to talk, you can put stuff together. Freestyle battle rap is that times 10 at a cadence and everything has to rhyme.
Yeah.
So take someone who doesn't know the English language and put them up against past RIP, dude, they're going to get completely roasted, right? Because here you have someone who can wield these phonetics and put, you know, not even just words together, but words into sentences and the syntax of those sentences into paragraphs and start to make all of these clever inferences and wordplay up against someone who doesn't have, and like you would never just take someone who doesn't know the English language, like just go down to the Port Authority and grab some guy and be like, all right, this is how you're going to learn English.
Yeah,
this
battle
is
rap.
Pat Stay. Go. There's no fucking idea.
Yeah.
But for some reason, personal trainers are like, oh, you know how we're going to move the squat? Fuck all that warm-up stuff. We're going to learn the squat by squatting. It's like, meet Pat Stay. Right? It's just you don't have any physical literacy, movement, phonetics to even put these things together to create the words and sentences and syntax and paragraphs. And you're up against a challenge as daunting as something like that. Right, yeah. And insurmountable is what it turns out to be. And you just end up in this vigilance state where, yeah, it kind of looks it, but it ain't it.
And I think, like, this is probably going off on a tangent. I won't make it take too long. But I think something that frustrates me about the current landscape of fitness, and for a different reason than probably most people think, but it comes from enjoying talking about what we're talking about. This is my favorite thing to talk about. Fucking teach a course on this. I mean, this is how you and I met and what we talked about. But it's this idea that we devalue basic implements like a barbell for something that might be more optimal for a goal, which is fine. I get the value in that. But at the end of the day, no matter where I am in the world, I can find a gym that has a barbell. Yeah. And my ability to use that barbell for any one thing, pressing, pulling, squatting, hinging, carrying, is going to be my ability. Like you said earlier, the barbell is a constant. I'm the variable. Well, it's my ability to compensate, adapt for this barbell that allows me to have a training variability where we can go into any gym and I can get a workout here. And I don't think there's a benefit to devaluing something like that adaptability for something that's more optimal in the moment.
I think they're also blind to what most people's bottleneck is. And if we looked at a real training bottleneck being the ability to forecast relatively or seemingly endless variables in your training, the barbell now becomes the thing that blasts through that
all plateaus.
Right, because it's like most people's plateaus are cognitive or from a coordination standpoint, the ability to co-contract, and we slap them on machines where we compress that movement potential down to pretty much zero, right? So they don't have to work through and start to think about these endless or seemingly endless insurmountable variables, because you rob them of that because you think their limitation is some sort of muscular capacity or output. It's not.
You helicopter parented that person's training, and now when they leave you at any point, they're this underdeveloped person, right? Like if you helicopter parent a child, I don't have one, thank God, because I'm underdeveloped. It's like that person has no ability to decision make. It comes down to not keeping it together for 5 minutes. Then you got this fucking client who only ever did your bumpers on the bowling alley, and they leave you for any amount of time or go to a gym with their buddy, and now they hurt themselves or can't progress because they don't have the phonetics to move.
Well, because you mentally nerfed them.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it was. And I don't think people, like I've said this for the last couple of years, that I think the frontier of the industry, and this is why we've done what we've done and we have skill acquisition and we have the level 2, is like the frontier of movement is going to go towards the brain. It's difficult and looking at that, but I think just from a theoretical perspective, if you understand that mental capacity is a reserve, we all know this, right? Jay calculating the innumerable options of the fucking 101 South is crazy. It's like, is this Volvo going to, or is something behind me going to, is a fucking helicopter going to crash on the fucking 280 or whatever? Like that to him is a lot. Imagine someone who can't sort out a barbell getting on a motorcycle. You're fucked.
Our boy Mo today. Shout out Mo. Amazing dude. Great.
Praise be.
Breaking shit.
How old is Mo? 20?
22?
Is he 22?
21, yeah.
He can drink alcohol? Jeez.
Yeah.
Dude, don't give it to him.
142 pounds. He can't drink alcohol.
Yeah.
Perfect example. This guy demolishes the glass chalk bowl.
Yeah. After we watched him try to pull the plate out like Excalibur.
Yeah.
King Arthur bowl. It's like, dude, are you thinking what? What did Mo do a few days ago? Mo just completed a powerlifting.
Competed a powerlifting
right?
and then flew here on no sleep.
Yeah.
So cognitively,
fuck, the reserve is
he's
time.
fucked.
Right, yeah.
He did a powerlifting meet, nervous system's out the window. Cognitively, he's wrecked he's overtired.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have the lifetime of experience to outweigh those things and go, I could still get by.
Yeah.
We could all be tired, do a powerlifting meet, come in, not break the chalk bowl.
Sorry, Cody. Yeah.
But like that was a perfect example of a guy who didn't have the forward model to go, if I try and take the plate off like this, am I aware of my surroundings? He didn't have the awareness because when the chips were down, he didn't have that experience to make the hypothesis to make the better decision.
Keep it together for 5 minutes.
How much is coaching like just creating a safe environment for our clients to fail, though?
Dude.
But yes, that. But you don't want to nerf them.
No, but
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
But
that
letting them fail.
emphasis on the failure, right? Because you don't know what failure is until you hit that point or go overboard, right? Like some of the best teaching that I've ever had in my like experience has been fucking myself up and getting hurting myself or whatever, because then I know the line.
Yeah.
Like I was talking with Ross today. Shout out Ross, dope man. But
It's his finest.
yeah. We were talking today about someone that was like so afraid to hurt themselves that they like, I mean, they dive into this stuff, into the biomechanics route. They go down these rabbit holes in fear that if they do something wrong, they're going to hurt themselves. Hypervigilance, exactly. So, creating a safe environment to fail, but allowing them to fail and understand where that point is.
Yeah. And that's where understanding the importance of exercise selection is really managing load and the ultimate constraint on the safety net to failure, right? Because it's like if your client's not ready to squat, don't leg press them forever. Like, if your kid's not ready to go out and get drunk, don't tie them to the fucking furnace and leave them there forever. You know what I mean? It's like give them exposures to which they can tolerate in a proximity to failure where they are safe. And then after that, it's like, my parents I could go to school dances, and then I could go to like, okay, there was semi-formal, and then there was, okay, there's this thing at this arena or some rec center, the Serb Center.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like he didn't get fucking jumped by the kids from St. Joe's at high school at the school dance. He can go to the Serb Center. He's got enough friends there. Yeah, he might get. And then there's a couple times where it's like, I find out where the line is. I wake up with fucking 2 black eyes, and then but now that is downtown is something that I can tolerate. But if you took me at 16 years old and put me downtown, I'd be fucking murdered.
Yeah.
Right? I would say the wrong thing to the wrong person and not be able to recognize some of these preliminary patterns that I would have learned at like, oh, like if I go to a high school dance and I just go up to some guy's girlfriend or whatever and I get like whatever, kicked in the leg or whatever some 16-year-old kid will do, that's bad. It's okay when it's a high school dance and you get kicked in the leg. It's not okay to take that behavior to the boom boom room on a lead avenue and get shot in the fucking kidney, right?
Yeah.
So it's that graded exposure to what, and I think the coaching trick is understanding your client's emotional capacity to deal with failure, right? Because some people like look, and it's we're not all cut out for it. Not that exercising makes you tough, but some people, they want to make a coach happy. They don't want to fail.
Yeah.
So some people you can just bury.
Yeah.
You can put every single exercise, they'll have some major learning curve that the next week they'll come back better. And they can tolerate, that's great. The recognition of a coach has to be how much failure can I expose them to without breaking them. And it's here, right? It's the psychological that breaks first. The body, trust me, I know what it takes to take your body to a breaking point and the mental fortitude that takes. Most people take, for me, it took a decade to develop. To be like, no, like stay in the lift. Like don't go anywhere. And then your muscles are like, no, like we meant this. Like we're signaling real time what's going on. And I think for novice clients or novice coaches, or potentially novice coaches and novice clients, the last thing you could do is not be aware of that moving goalpost of a client's ability to tolerate what they deem as failure. Yeah. Some people can do it a lot. Great. Give them as much as they can handle. Some people can't. Peel back and give them one thing to focus on. Because if you break them psychologically, you're done.
Yeah.
And set real expectations for people too. Like
intention.
It's fucking intention, right?
Well, it's funny because there's a quote that goes around. And I don't necessarily like it, and it's comparison is the thief of joy.
Okay.
Have you heard that quote?
Yeah.
I think expectation is the thief of joy.
100%.
Because it is essentially a comparison of what you think ought to be and what is.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of everything. Like, you have minimal expectations of other people, regardless of what that is. But if you can set realistic expectations, you can begin to experience joy in training by setting out markers that we can tangibly hit.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think it is that expectation that people look for, whether it's losing 5 pounds in 10 weeks. If the goal is, this is the crux of aim or overpromise and underdeliver, right? Is this idea that we've set an expectation to do one thing and we've actually exceeded that expectation. So it's not necessarily that comparison is the thief of joy. It's expectation is comparing what ought to be to what is. And if you can exceed what ought to be with what is, then you've created a joyful training experience.
100%.
How many times have we seen someone take their client, again, skip everything, skip the beginning part and go straight to a barbell when that person's not ready. It's like, okay, well, let's just progress this until we die.
Right.
Right. Then you get that person and you're like, okay, we just did a 225-pound PR, but it sucks. It's a quarter squat. But then in that client's mind, that 225 is realistically never going to happen.
Right.
Or now you have to be like, okay, now that we've worked on, the PR, you got 225, now you have to go back to ground zero and work. So it's nothing that you do for the next 5 years is going to matter to that client because nothing in their brain
is going to be better
than the 225-pound PR that they didn't even get.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's you as a coach fucked that up for them.
Yeah. You took the joy out of training.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is if compliance is the underlying science, especially because there's a guarantee everyone in this room, maybe even more often than not, depending on where we're at with competing, has not found inherent joy in the moment in training, probably more often than not.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. But it's we're delayed gratification. We're aware of the long-term joy that it might bring us one day, maybe, when things stop hurting. But we're okay to stay in it. Right. But the other people, like how important joy is in the long-term success of your client is everything. So if you've had them reach the mountaintop, whatever that is, in the first couple of weeks, but then you have to strip everything back and reverse engineer it. It's like that next uphill is just going to be so daunting that they're not going to be able to start to close these loops, these intention, habit, action things, intention, hypothesis, action things. You're gonna go off into action and you're never gonna return.
Because compliance, obviously that's like how we get results for our clients, but that's also how we get paid.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's an important thing to remember.
Compliance equals retention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Go in the closet and go fuck yourself.
Yeah, that's essentially what you're doing. And it is nice when those two things line up. Yeah. Right. And I think that's where business, and it takes a decent amount of understanding and how much cerebral forethought can 4 dudes put into things that are so, but there's 4 people here that have successful businesses when it comes to training. Right. And that's not by accident. Mm-hmm. Right. Just like I've never met someone who thinks deeply about training that isn't successful in training. Yeah. Right. It's almost like the strong upper back of training. It's like I've never met someone with a strong upper back that's not inherently strong. Right. If you think, because it doesn't take long. You know why we know? Because we just made this up in the last 56 minutes. And it might be the favorite podcast I've ever recorded about training.
I think this is the smartest one we've ever recorded.
I hope this makes sense. Yeah. And then the risk of making it dumber, I think we're just going to call it there. Yeah. Schultze, the pride of Edmonton. We'll find out a better title for you than that because it's shit. Killian Hamilton, Red, White, and Jordan. RX Radio. We'll see you next time.